Oh, come on! How's it going, everybody? You're watching part 2 of my Atari Flashback collection review. This is the Broken Controller Club and my name's Ed. In part 1 I did mini reviews of the arcade games, and this time we're checking out the cartridge games. If you'd like to know more about the menus and extras, then those are also in my part 1 review. Otherwise, we're going to jump right into the next batch of games now. First up is Adventure, and boy do you have to use your imagination to make this feel even a little interesting. You control a heroic square and pick up what's supposed to be a sword that looks suspiciously like a directional arrow, and you go through an empty maze. There aren't really any enemies as you're trying to figure out what to do, but eventually I did fight a dragon that looks an awful lot like a goose with a broken neck and coat hanger for legs. Then I turn it off because never again. Next. This is the home version of the arcade game Asteroids. The game isn't displaying correctly on my capture card, as you can see, so instead here's a picture of me with Shovel Knight at a MegaCon that I went to a few years back. I assure you that, number 1, this is a lot more interesting than the game footage, and 2, like most of the cartridge versions of the Atari arcade games, Asteroids plays pretty much the same way, but just looks a lot more primitive and pixelated. Yes, even Asteroids, a game that was primitive already. Next. Atari Video Cube is kinda sorta a Rubik's Cube game, but how you rotate the cube makes almost no sense to me. The game wants you to move to one square, and then you can move the squares in that direction, but then sometimes you can change the colors of the other squares. It actually made my real Rubik's Cube look a lot easier to solve. And the little guy either has a fez hat on his head or a bomb fuse. Couldn't figure it out. Anyways, this was awful. Next. It doesn't get much simpler than basic math. Like, I remember programming stuff like this in BASIC on the Apple IIe in junior high school. That was in between me sneaking away to play Crystal Quest on the Macintosh when the teacher wasn't looking. Anyways, you can choose the types of math problems from the console menu. Trigger warning to everybody still going to grade school and college in California, because these are all still going to be difficult for you. And then after you choose the type of program, you then complete the problems. It's more fun to use flashcards. Next. Brain Games is made up of various brain teasers with a much heavier emphasis on memorization than I thought there would be in a collection like this. All the different games have names like Find Me, Add Me, Picture Me, Play Me, and Touch Me, and I was so bored out of my mind trying each of these that I was mostly just thinking, F me. Next. Breakout is not only one of my favorite Foo Fighters songs, but it's also just the regular version of the Super Breakout arcade game I reviewed in part 1. As with all the paddle games on the Atari collections, you'll want to lower the sensitivity and only use the directional pad if you want any type of accuracy. There are multiple variations that let you catch the ball and release it, there are timed games, things like that. It's not exciting, but then it's not Atari Video Cube either. Next.
Dojo Casino, it's all in the mind.
I'm sorry. This casino, however, will be on your console and features different games like Blackjack, Stud Poker, which no matter how many times I hear it, sounds like an adult film star's name, and Poker Solitaire, which I also think sounds kind of dirty. I guess I'm just in a mood today. Anyways, I read through the instructions, and the hardest thing about these games is just learning how to get your cursor around on the screen. The interface, as you can see, is minimal, and it's hard to know where you can place cards or if you're even allowed to. LCD games released around then were more user-friendly than this. Next. Championship Soccer was actually kind of fun, despite being kind of stupid looking, but you need a friend to play this with and not against the computer, or else it's going to take you all day to play through a game. See, the players in this move a lot like foosball players on a foosball table, and getting the ball up toward the CPU's goal can be really tricky, and the CPU is surprisingly decent at defending. I mean, looking at the screen, you'll think it's a bunch of footballs playing soccer, but I think we can all agree I've played worse sports games on Atari. Next. Codebreaker is really just a guessing game. You'll enter some numbers and it'll tell you if you have the correct number in the correct spot, or if it's just the correct number but the wrong spot, and you use that to get the code in as few attempts as possible. I actually didn't hate this, and if you're the type of person who likes puzzles, you may not hate this either. I don't know if a recommendation can get more tepid than that, but there you have it. Next. Concentration is a classic memory game, and it's also from the game show Classic Concentration that Alex Trebek hosted before he had to slum it on Celebrity Jeopardy with Sean Connery and Turd Ferguson. This is pretty simple. You basically just pick 2 squares and see if you get a match, then remember where those are, and then, spoiler alert, you pick 2 more squares again and see if you find one that matches the other ones that you just picked, and so on. Getting a match, I guess, gets you the prizes in the squares, but the prizes are weird things like butterflies and a couple of birds, and I think a rhinoceros beetle. Maybe this is Concentration from a third world country. Once they start trafficking people and opiates in as prizes, you might want to cash out. Next. Bentley Bear to the rescue. This is the Atari 2600 version of Crystal Castles, and other than the graphical downgrade, the game plays the same and it's still fun. You've got different layouts for each level, the enemies are all here. Really, the only thing that bugs me is that the crystals aren't dots, but they're thin lines, and they're kind of hard to pick up because of the controls. So there's finally a solid winner in this video. Next. Demons to Diamonds was actually fun also, and it was colorful and it controlled well. You move your ship around to shoot enemies, and diamonds would fly across the screen, and you have to shoot those also. Clearing the enemies got you to the next level. It's a fairly simple game, but if the movie Simple Jack taught us anything... Wait, hold on. That's not right. That's Miley Cyrus. There we go. But if the movie Simple Jack taught us anything, it's that simple can be good too. Next. Double Dunk immediately grabs you by sporting a hip soundtrack that the kids can bug out to. Once you start playing, though, you see a game of basketball between 2 teams of goblins or zombies who both look like they have busted knees, and the basketball looks less like a ball and more like a stiff turd being thrown at the basket. Honestly, I'd pay to watch that basketball game. Anyways, I was awful at it and couldn't score a single point. To this day, the only basketball game I was ever good at was the original NBA Street. Next. I'm going to call flag capture a brain teaser, but there isn't a lot of teasing going on. You start at the corner of the screen and hit the button to see if the flag is there. If it's not, then it'll show you an arrow to point you in the right direction, and at that point, you're just following the arrow to go where it tells you until you get the flag. There are different variations like most Atari games, and if you want to be annoyed, you can select the flag to move around the screen or bore the hell out of your friends by having them play multiplayer with you. Next. This game, this golf game, oh, it was upsettingly terrible. I actually preferred the golf game in the last collection, where there's not even a golfer on the screen, than this one, because this guy does you no favors as you try to hit the ball. Like, notice that the golf club, which it also looks like one of those canes that blind people use when they're walking around, it only swings in one direction, meaning that no matter what direction you'd like to hit it in, you'll have to manipulate that one swing to get it there. And if you hit the ball into a wall, you might as well just restart the thing, because it's really tedious to get the ball away from there. I hated this game. And I'm sure you're going to be upset to hear this, but that is all for today's selection of Atari games. Stay tuned for part 3 of my review, where I explore a haunted house, get into a Wild West shootout, and go on a secret quest that I'm sure won't be disappointing at all. See you next time. Congratulations! You're one of an elite few to make it to the end of the video. Reward yourself by hitting the round subscribe button in the middle, and then check out the other goodies I've got in the links next to it.